Greetings, welcome back to CS295, Web Dev 2. We're on PHP programming. So if you remember, last week we worked on the accessing data, right? Creating the form, sending the data over. Then we had the basics, how to get the data in there, what's a variable. But now we're going to go into some of the basic programming. Basically, what's the difference between JavaScript, loops, functions, conditionals, and then how do we do this in PHP, right? That's really the gist of it. So if you're following along on Trinket, you can see what the code looks like. We'll talk about it. We'll type it out. And we can see, again, the similarities between the two of them as we're going. All right. So I already created a file called loops.php, so we'll jump into that. I have it all set up for the PHP. So let's kind of look at this, again, compared to JavaScript. So we type our standard for loop. All right. Now, the biggest difference is just how we handle the variable. So instead of var I, it's just I equals 0. Semicolon's the same. And again, we have to do our $i. It's probably one of the most common mistakes. So less than 10. So this one right here is going to, this one here is going to go ahead and start at 0, right? If we were going to use a list, that's where we'd start at. Or if we just wanted to loop 10 times, so in this case, right, I is less than 10, so this will loop from 0 to 9, or 10 times, I++. Again, that's all similar. We'll do the bracket, and now we have our link, right? So let's go ahead and copy this, paste it. So we have our echo world, and I'll just hashtag this one out for now. So this echo world should be on there 10 times. So we go and make sure we have the right link. So loops. And hello world. Oh, I gotta save it and run it. And there we go. Hello world, hello world, hello world. That's what we told it to do, right? If we wanted a BR, we need to type in the BR. So now we save this, refresh it, and again, that's it. Everything else we're saying, like we want to add our, so remember concatenates period. If we want to add the I so we can see which one we're at, iteration we're at, we just $i, save it, run it, and there we go, right? That's the simple gist of a for loop. Now there is, because this is not really running all the time on someone's computer, right? The code goes to the server, runs on the server. You might find that there are more often while loops in here than there are for loops. Probably still mostly using for loops, but you'll see it more common than JavaScript is what I'm saying, right? So they'll have while loops. And there are while loops in JavaScript, but normally you don't do a lot of while loops because, again, your code's running on the thing. You want it to run X amount of times, and JavaScript is asynchronous, so it's hard to run while loops in JavaScript. Whereas you might find more uses. Again, I still don't use them a lot, but we have them, so we'll kind of look at this. The key is you still need the same things you had before. So let's do X, since I already used I, equals 0. So where is it starting? And then while, and then X is less than 10. All right, so again, we're just doing the same basic things. I'm gonna copy this, so type it, and this is where you can make an infinite loop real quickly if you don't increment the X, right? So you need all three pieces. You'll notice we have it starts at, so again, you might use while loops a little bit more often. While the file still has files, stuff like that. But again, normally I normally use the for loops. This is just introducing you to PHP. Not trying to make you an expert PHP person, but just so you can understand the basics. And this is it, right? Your standard for loop, and then a while loop. So let's save that, and we should see pretty much the same. I don't have the, I do have the BR. So rerun it, and there we go. Not much to the loops, right? Very similar to what we were doing in JavaScript. So let's go look at functions, because they're pretty much, again, exactly the same, especially the base function. So you still have function, and then give it a meaningful name, which is not a super meaningful name. All right, so again, that right there looks exactly like what we're doing, right? That looks exactly like what we're doing. So what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to grab this, cut that out of there. So that was a cut. And then let's paste it in here. If you highlight and hit tab, it'll do all of it as a reminder. Now, when we run this, let's go ahead and save this. Hopefully you remember how functions work. It's not been that long, right? It doesn't actually run that code. So what ran was this, but this code didn't run. So we do our do something, and that, and now every single time we run this, it'll run. So we should see this now show up twice. Still from 0 to whatever. Now let's add our parameters, right? So let's do times. And this way, what we can do is whatever number we send. Now, and here's the key difference. There's a $ there, right? Most programming languages don't need you to put var string. Well, at least Python and JavaScript don't. So in this case, you do need that $ there. And then we're going to replace 10 here. So whatever number we put in here, right, the argument is going to send up 10. This first time is do 10 times, and the next one sends up 5, and it'll do 5. Now we could do beginning and end, right? And then we could have this as a variable for beginning and then end. But let's go ahead and save this and show that real quick. So we run it, and then the first one went the 9 times, or 10 times, and the second one went the 5 times, right? So 0 to 9, 0 to 4. So again, we could do this however we want. Oops, let's go comma, -1, comma. So we can do $beginning, comma, and make this the end. As an example, again, this is just showing you the difference between JavaScript and PHP. So there we go, right? We have beginning, end. Return it, and there we go. It started different things and ends where you tell it to end. The only other thing is you can do a return, right? And then if you're going to return anything, again, if it's going to be a variable, it just needs that $ in there. That's a key difference when you're going through JavaScript to PHP. In a lot of this aspect is making sure you don't forget that, because all of a sudden you just kind of get used to doing JavaScript, especially because half the time you're doing PHP, you might even use PHP to write JavaScript, and that's where you kind of get confused, right? Because remember, you can write the command, the HTML in this. There's nothing that's stopping you from writing a script tag in PHP and confusing yourself bounce back between the different types of variables. All right, that's all I really have for you. For this, right, there's not a lot to functions and loops. They're pretty much the basics, right? So variables, arrays, right? We've gone through these different things. You've already kind of saw the for loop already. You use a for each to loop through this, right? That might be a little different than somehow some programming languages do it. But again, at the end of the day, most of this is just the same. It's just really the way they do the variables is a little bit different, which can kind of get you confused on how to do that. So with that, next lesson we'll jump into the if statement. And then I didn't do the if post. We really would have matched there, but we'll go to if post, which will help you kind of protect your code, so to speak. And really just building a basic web page, so you can learn this. If you want to build a fully functional web page, you're going to do a lot more research than that. But this should get you the basics, kind of understand how PHP works. That's all I have this lesson. We'll see you next lesson.